you can see how the dinosaurs and the archosaurs and the pterosaurs, how they ended up winning the arms race to evolve the best tools.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't see what I'm doing right now, it's because this is a podcast, but
He's doing like little velociraptor arms.
Exactly. I couldn't help it. It just happened.
This is the Exploring the National Parks podcast with Dirt in My Shoes. My name is Ash, and I'm a former park ranger and the founder of Dirt in My Shoes. I think that the parks are best seen from the trail, and I'm here to make national park trip planning easy.
And I'm John. I carry the kids on the trails, I tell stories, and notice all the things that Ash doesn't care about much, like trees.
Join us as we show you around America's spectacular national parks.
We're sharing our favorite places, fun facts, adventures, and misadventures.
And we'll even throw in a little trip planning.
Let's start exploring.
So we were down in St. George, Utah, which is near Zion National Park, if you're not familiar with that. But we went down there for a fun little weekend trip, and I went canyoneering.
Yeah, you did.
I was so proud of myself. If you don't know what canyoneering is, it's basically where you go through a canyon with ropes. So you're rappelling through the canyon. And a lot of times, because you canyoneer a lot in the Southwest, and a lot of times it's more slot canyon-y. Which is really cool.
Yes, it super is.
So anyway, I just wanted to brag a minute for my intense bravery.
Well, you got to tell the scary part, which is where you had to rappel backwards, basically over a ledge, and you couldn't see where you were supposed to go.
Okay, so I have a friend who's been a dear friend for many, many, many years. And she worked in Grand Teton. Well, I was in Grand Teton. She was in Jackson. But we worked up there at the same time. And we knew each other before that, but it was really fun. We were both there at the same time. And we went on all these just really big adventures together.
Right.
And she is probably my most adventurous friend. And that's something that I've really come to appreciate because it's super hard to find people who will go and do things like that. But anyway, so she lives in St. George, and I invited myself down to go see her. And she's way into canyoneering, and she had all the gear. Like, she just led me through the canyon, which I just thought was so sweet.
Yeah. Me and the boys, we invited ourselves along on Ash's trip, and we just did all of the things that us boys wanted to do while she was off having her adventure.
Yeah, they weren't invited canyoneering. But anyway, so she, though, this particular friend, I feel like she always kind of gets me into situations that are like beyond my comfort level. She's really good at that. In fact, we were talking and she's like, I've just found now that like if it's just a regular hiking trail, I'm bored. I always look for the ones that are like, yeah, there's like all this scrambling and all this stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't be more opposite. I like my feet on firm ground.
Yep.
So anyway, we go through this canyon and it was super cool because the main drop in the canyon, it was about 80 feet. It was a beginner canyon because I don't know what I'm doing. So she didn't want to take me on anything too hard. This 80-foot drop, you just go down. And I couldn't see the bottom at all because of the way the rocks were. It was like I don't know. It was pretty terrifying.
Interesting overhang.
Yeah.
Rock overhang.
So I had to like rappel down this overhang and she's just like, you've got this. But I couldn't see her anywhere. And I was just shaking in my boots.
It's the outdoor recreation version of a trust fall.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and she's tiny. I'm like, are you sure if I fall, like you're going to be able to catch me? It's amazing what that equipment can do. But anyway, so yeah, I was super adventurous already. And then at the end, she was like, okay, so I read on all trails that you can keep hiking down this canyon and we don't have to rappel anymore, but we can hike a little further. And then we'll need to scramble out. There's like a scramble to get to the regular trail that helps you get out of the canyon. And I'm thinking to myself, no, that doesn't sound like me. I'm not sure. And she's like, come on, I want to see what it's like. And so I was like, okay, we can do it. And of course, we ended up scrambling out pretty steeply. Not my favorite. She's like a mountain goat. I'm like having a heart attack behind her. Like, if I slip, I'm going to fall to my death.
You're thinking if this was a horror movie,
Yeah.
this would be the part where all the audience is like, you should make that decision.
I know, but we ended up, we got out just fine. And anyway, it was really fun. So all that to say, I'm really proud of myself for doing something out of my comfort level because I just think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of your age or your abilities, like to do something that just gets your heart pumping and makes you nervous and is not something you normally do.
Well, that's the national park's fun thing, is that they always have a way to push you further.
Yeah. And then B, I was thinking about this a lot, actually, because I actually just like a week ago got an email from someone who was like, we're going to Zion. We want to do like one extra activity. What should we do? Like, should we go like on a helicopter ride? Should we go canyoneering? Should we go ATVing? Like, whatever, you know, there's all this stuff outside of the park that you can do.
Right.
As I was responding to her, I was like, oh, 100% canyoneering.
Yeah.
Because you have these professionals that can lead basically any age, you know, within reason. But it's like, I would take my boys to do that. In fact, now I really want to, after going on my own canyoneering adventure.
Right.
Like, that would be sweet for my kids to also learn that they can do hard things and to get out of their comfort zone. And so anyway.
Ash is our family guinea pig.
Yeah.
For trying out new things.
No, but I mean, and I just thought, you know what, that's like, side note, if you're going to Zion anytime soon and you're looking for something, there's tons of canyoneering you can do, and they make it really safe, and they can take, like I said, basically anyone. So just something to think about.
Yeah.
It was a really fun experience for me.
That's so cool.
Plus, just the fact that, like, you got to stay close to your outdoor adventurous friends. Because it's hard to find.
Yeah, that is so true. You can move all over the country and away from them, but you'll always come back together when you're all craving adventure.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going back down to the desert today on the podcast.
Today's going to be an adventure.
Yeah, that's what got me thinking. I was like, I love being in the Southwest because I do think there's a lot of stuff that you can do that's not normal for most people. But today we're jumping to Petrified Forest National Park again for today's Fun Facts episode, which I'm really excited about.
I am so excited. I love Petrified Forest. And like we talked about in the Exploring Petrified Forest episode, this is a really easy park to take for granted and to not appreciate and kind of just like drive in, drive out and be like, some of that wood was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What's next?
Yeah. On to where? Grand Canyon.
On to Grand Canyon, on to Disney, you know, California, Las Vegas, some of these other places. But as I was going through the fun facts preparation, I wanted to make this like something people go there and they're just like, I cannot believe what's all around me. You know, we're going to jog everybody's imagination a little bit. And in order to really do that and then understand Petrified Forest National Park, we need to first talk about one of my favorite storytelling devices.
Okay.
The flashback.
Okay.
Or the flash forward. Either way, the time warp, but a flashback and a flash forward. When you watch movies or you read books, authors and directors use flashbacks and flash forwards all the time. It's like one of the best ways to give you really important information or context just at the right moment so that you can feel the weight of what is about to happen. You know, so like let's say you're watching a movie and you think you know who every character is. And then in the last 5 minutes of the film, they do a flashback. And then you realize this person that you thought you knew isn't who you thought they were. And then they flash back to the present and you're like, don't give that guy a gun, you know? Or the opposite, like the author could use a flash forward to give you a short description of the future. And then they go back. There's like, you realize, oh my gosh, these characters don't know what I just know. And you just want to scream at them, but you can't. And then you just kind of like watch as like a car wreck happens. And you're just like, I can't do anything about it. You know?
Right.
I really love the flashback and the flash forward. The Notebook, like that whole movie is a flashback.
Yeah.
And a flash forward to actually watching that movie with Ash is she'll go through a whole box of tissues.
Whatever. That movie, actually, I don't love that movie.
What? Ryan Gosling's best.
It's fine. I have to be in a very specific mood to watch that movie.
All right. I was a little surprised by that, considering the amount of tears every time we watch it.
Nicholas Sparks, Walk to Remember. That's a better one, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's true.
I also really like The Choice.
Okay, well, moving on past The Notebook and Nicholas Sparks. Without giving the names of any movies to spoil anything, here are some big reveals that came as a result of a well-executed flashback or flash forward. He was dead all along. Her son will lead the resistance in the future. They're actually identical twins. There will be a holy war in his name, and he loved her all along and promised to protect her son. Hopefully you caught some of those. Did you catch any of those, Ash?
I think just 2. I think I got 2.
Kings to you, Ash.
Yeah. Oh, I know that
one. Not a flash forward, but very good. Well, one of my favorite time flash moments is, of course, in The Lord of the Rings, when the Fellowship is in the woods of Lothlorien. Everybody has gone to sleep, but Frodo startles and wakes up to see Lady Galadriel walking through the forest. He's curious and decides to follow her. She makes her way to a strange clearing with a basin on a pedestal in the middle of it and a little waterfall off to one side. Lady Galadriel grabs a pitcher and starts to fill it with water as Frodo follows her into the clearing. Then she turns and looks at him and gives him a choice. "Will you look into the mirror?" Frodo responds, "What will I see?" And then Galadriel says, "Even the wisest cannot tell, for the mirror shows many things, things that were, things that are, and some things that have not yet come to pass." Do you know what every Lord of the Rings fan is itching to say at this very moment, Ash?
No.
In place of a Dark Lord, you will have a queen! Treacherous as the sea! All shall love me and despair. Anyways, makes you feel itchy if you don't finish it. So anyways, that's
I'll take your word for it.
So anyways, that's one of my favorite moments. And so, as we approach Petrified Forest today, my invitation is to look into the mirror with me, because we are going to spend most of today's episode looking at things that were and how they relate to the things that are. Flashing back to a time when Petrified Forest looked much different than what we see today. Today, when you see Petrified Forest National Park, what do you see, Ash?
A lot of rocks, a lot of petrified wood.
Mm-hmm.
It's very desolate.
Yes.
There's basically no water out there.
Right.
You can see very far distances because there's nothing.
It's so flat.
So, yeah.
And you can see, depending on where you're at in the park, you can see, badlands, extending into the horizon. Mm-hmm. Or you can kind of see, grasslands in the southern section of the park with, islands of badlands popping up here and there. So it's, like you said, desolate is a great word to describe it.
Yeah.
In the summer, it's harsh, hot, and dry. And in the winter, it's bleak, cold, and barren.
Well, and truly on surface level, it doesn't look like much.
Mm-hmm. It's so true.
If you're driving on the freeway right there and you get off at Petrified Forest, you're like, this looks exactly the same as what I just drove through for 10 hours through New Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, exactly. Or Texas parts of it,
West Texas, where it's flat and barren. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, but that is a stark contrast from where the mirror is about to take us. We are embarking on a flashback of more than 200 million years to the Triassic period, where we will find fun fact number 1. During the Triassic period, everything about Petrified Forest National Park was different. Fun fact number 1 is that not only was Petrified Forest located near the equator, which made it hot, humid, and tropical, but Petrified Forest National Park was also at the heart of a river system larger than any river system we have on Earth today.
Oh my gosh. Okay, but the thing is, you have to think, like, where did all this petrified wood come from?
Mhm.
There had to have been trees.
Right.
Right?
Exactly. Totally
And so,
different
like,
world.
But there's like no trees there now,
Right.
except for all the rock ones. So it is like, and I don't think very many people actually stop to think about that fact.
Yeah, it's true.
Because they're rock.
How am I here to see a forest, but there's no forests anywhere?
Yeah, but I don't think most people think about that. I know I didn't
Mhm.
until actually this last time we went, when I was like, I really actually want to dig in a little more to how these petrified trees came to be.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean, when you start looking at it, it was a very wet and lush landscape.
Yeah. So let's talk about that for a second. The largest river system, larger than anything we have on Earth today. By the way, the Park Service said that with no wishy-washiness.
Really?
Yes.
Straight up, like the biggest.
Like straight up mic drop moment. They were
Nice.
straight-faced and confident. They were like, this place had the biggest river system on Earth. And so let's talk about what that means. That means that the Petrified Forest was part of a system of rivers larger than the Nile, larger than the Mississippi, the Missouri, the Columbia rivers, the Congo, the Yangtze, and yes, larger even than the mighty Amazon with all of its many tributaries.
That's crazy.
Okay, so when you flash back this far, North America, though, is barely recognizable. Like, it's in a totally different place on the planet, and it probably would even be hard to pick out on the map because it was still part of Pangaea.
I was going to say, if it was near the equator, then yes, it obviously had to have moved between then and now.
Correct. It was actually, North America still was on the coast, so it wasn't like landlocked in between a bunch of other continents. But California was mostly underwater, as well as most of Nevada. And so the coastline of North America cut all the way into what is now Nevada, Arizona, and Idaho. And something super important, all along that coastline, tall mountains formed that fortified the perimeter of the continent along the coast. But there were also mountains in Colorado in the west, and then there were some mountains to the south in New Mexico and Texas. And in between all of these mountains, a massive low elevation valley. Okay, so why am I describing all of this? Because you have to recognize that North America was getting as much rain as the Amazon rainforest does now. And so all of the water that fell throughout these states and in the mountains along the coast of Nevada and Arizona and all the water that fell in these mountains in Colorado, New Mexico, and Texas, all of it was flowing inland through the same place, right through the heart of this great valley in between, right through Petrified Forest National Park.
Which is just so hard to envision. Having been there, I mean, when you drive through the West, all those states you're mentioning, it's like there's really not very much water all around.
No.
In any of them.
Right. I mean, there's a big river. You have the Colorado River.
But even that, I mean, obviously, we're still struggling with having enough water even from that. So
exactly.
I know. So it's just really hard to envision something else.
Okay. But there's something important, though, that's different between like even if the Colorado River was bigger or had more water going through it, it still wouldn't create the same landscape that we're about to discuss and describe. The difference is the low elevation valley was super flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was probably pretty close to sea level, basically. It didn't have this, the Colorado Plateau is super high.
Right.
And so when the rivers go through it, it just cuts right through the landscape. It doesn't really saturate the landscape. This landscape, this ancient petrified forest landscape, this massive Great Valley was flat, flatter than you will get in like the Amazon area because it flows from the Andes and then goes all the way down. The reason this flatness matters is because the rivers slowed down and it was flat and they saturated all of the landscape, which is why it probably resembled more of like Louisiana or Florida than anything else. And so it's hard to imagine that, but basically Petrified Forest was part of what you would imagine as the Arizona Bayou, a vast lowlands filled with an incredible amount of water, gigantic slow-moving rivers pumping water into enormous swamps and marshes, sloughs, and bayous, extending from Arizona and New Mexico northwest up through Utah and eventually reaching the ocean somewhere along the coast of northern Nevada. So you had this great valley, which is just huge, and the river systems are depositing tons of mud and nutrients throughout this great valley, which will lead us to something very important and one of my favorite things. And to give you a clue, it has to do with why I'm calling it the Great Valley.
Okay.
Is that ringing any bells for you?
The Great Valley. Is that from a movie?
It is from a movie.
Oh, no. Wait. Land Before Time.
Yes.
Oh, my gosh. That was a blast from the past.
Did it just hit you?
Yeah, it just hit me.
You just realized, oh, my gosh, I was born in the 1900s.
I was.
I am a 1980s kid.
I'm
so
a 1980s
yes.
kid. Yeah, I grew up on those.
So I have seen all of the 900 sequels of Land Before Time instead of
Didn't you try to watch them with the kids? I don't remember
Yes.
if you did. I do feel like you went through a stage of watching a lot of those movies.
I did, but there were just too many. I don't know. The first one is the best.
Yeah.
And so, anyways, which I was reminded of while I was thinking about that. One of our cars is named after one of the characters in that film.
Petrie.
Yeah. And I don't know why.
It was my car originally, and I don't remember why. I think one of my friends named it. So, yeah.
This cute little Nissan Sentra.
I know. Petrie.
So anyways, the Land Before Time. I am so excited that we get to talk about dinosaurs now.
Mm-hmm.
Because The Land Before Time was my favorite dinosaur movie. It was Land Before Time and We're Back. And then I hit Jurassic Park and realized
Jurassic Park.
dinosaurs can be scary. The sharp tooth scenes in Land Before Time were a little bit scary at first, but then, Jurassic Park took it to a new level.
Yeah.
But in our flashback, we ended up in the Triassic period, which is 200 to 250 million years ago. It's the first block of time in the Mesozoic era, which is what we call the Age of Reptiles. The Mesozoic includes a huge block of time, like I said, from 250 million years ago, but all the way to 65 million years ago. So it includes the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous.
Mm-hmm.
Can definitely see how the Mesozoic would be the Age of Reptiles when they ruled the Earth. But Petrified Forest National Park is all about the Triassic period. And there is something special about this time period. Not only is it the beginning of the Age of Reptiles and the beginning of the Mesozoic, but the Triassic specifically is known by another name, the dawn of the dinosaurs.
Nice.
Because guess what? At the time of the Triassic, dinosaurs were just one of the many competing evolutionary branches of reptiles that lived on the planet. And I never realized that. I always thought that evolution was just one straight line of
Yeah, what else was there?
Well, it's
we
just
were talking about is dinosaurs.
I know. In my mind, it's just okay, worm, water worm, fish with legs, frog with teeth, then alligator to dinosaur.
Yeah.
It's just kind of that straight line.
And sometimes bird to dinosaur.
I know. It's
Is there a jump there somewhere too?
My simplistic idea is frog with teeth, alligator. That makes total sense to me.
Listen, I'm the one who doesn't even really believe in dinosaurs. So. Because my logical mind is they don't fit.
Right.
It doesn't make sense where dinosaurs would even come from. So I appreciate your simplistic way of being sure, here's the line.
Yeah, it's true. How do you go from nice frog to death, Monty Python frog that's going to jump? Anyways. But it's not just one single line, even though you may not be a believer, Ash. It's okay.
I mean, I kind of do, but my logical brain is just nope. There's no way dinosaurs were real.
It's just too far back and too many questions.
Yeah.
Okay, but in reality, well, maybe not to your reality. But
I can't believe I admitted that. Every time we go to a park, I'm like, yeah, but dinosaurs weren't real. So.
Oh my gosh. It's like I'm walking around with a conspiracy theorist all the time.
I know. I feel like if I really let myself dig into conspiracy theories, I would be fully invested. Yeah. And so I just have to put a boundary there. Be like, not sure about that, but I'm also not going to look any deeper.
I'm agnostic when it comes to dinosaurs. I'm not a full believer. I'm not denying or, accepting.
It just is.
Okay. Well, what the fossil record teaches us, Ash.
Okay, I'm ready.
Is that the Triassic period didn't just have a single line of worm to dinosaur. It actually had legions of evolutionary lines from all different kinds of creatures, where nature is adapting and evolving new kinds of weapons and defensive capabilities. It's basically like an arms race between all these different creatures. Some with slicing claws and others developing sharper teeth, different kinds of bones or skeletal structures, a nose here or a nose instead of a nose over here, or an ankle or a hip design that might be just slightly better for chasing down your prey. And so there were legions of evolutionary lines all trying out new things. Spikes, feathers, nothing was off the table. But by the end of the Triassic era, among all the evolutionary lines, one stood taller than all of the others. One stood upon the mountains above the Great Valley and proclaimed with one voice, "We will not go quietly into the night.
We will not go down without a fight.
We're going to live on. We're going to survive."
John's favorite speech of all time.
Oh my gosh. Today we celebrate Triassic Day. Just so good. Oh my gosh. Bill Pullman, best speech a president has ever given.
Yeah.
Okay, which brings me to fun fact number 2. Fun fact number 2 is that, by the way, great job picking up where I left off.
I know. I've heard that speech so many times. I've probably only seen the movie. It's from Independence Day. I've probably only seen the movie like 3 times.
Yes.
Maybe. But I hear you quote that speech any chance you get. So
yeah. I have a friend of mine. I'm going to shout him out right now. Peter. Every 4th of July, every Independence Day at 6 o'clock in the morning, he texts me this speech. And I wake up, read it, and go back to bed.
And John also performed that speech for our family talent show this past Christmas. So there you go.
Oh my gosh. It was so good. All right. Leaving Bill Pullman and the creatures on the mountain. Fun fact number 2 is that Petrified Forest National Park has one of the most continuous and complete sections of exposed Triassic-aged rocks anywhere in the world.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And this really is a big fossil park, aside from the petrified wood, which a lot of people don't realize.
Yeah, it's absolutely incredible.
There's lots of other fossils you can find here.
I know, which is why we're focusing on that early. We will get to the namesake soon enough. But the fossils are amazing. But what this means is that we can watch this incredible story play out in the fossil record. Geologists and paleontologists can see it before their very eyes. This amazing conflict between bloodlines, battling and struggling in an ancient arm race of weaponry and teeth, pulling fossils out of the ground, dictating the stories that they tell. The great story, the origin story of how dinosaurs conquered the world. And it all played out in this Triassic period, and Petrified Forest is at the heart of it all. On the NPS website, they even have a whole section on the Petrified Forest page titled Triassic Park.
Cool.
And it all plays out right here in what we could call the Arizona Bayou.
Do we know where, as you're driving through the park, what rocks you're going to want to pay attention to?
Okay.
I guess I'm just thinking, when you get down into the Badlands stuff, there's fossils in there, but probably not Triassic because Badlands erodes super fast.
Mm-hmm. It's
so
true.
I wouldn't imagine that's the area of the park. So yeah, I guess I'm just wondering because I want to go find them.
When we get to fun fact number 4, we're going to put a pin in that.
Okay.
So we'll get there for
All
sure.
right.
Like, where do you go? Because there are paleontologists that are like combing through everything.
Yeah.
But my answer to your question is going to surprise you.
Is it?
Yes.
Is it in the Badlands part?
Okay. Well, like I said, put a pin in it, Ash.
Fine. Okay.
Show some patience.
I
Goodness.
have no patience. You know that.
Okay. So we talked about how it's the dawn of the dinosaurs. That's the Triassic period. And if they were to make a movie out of the Triassic period, the technical name for the family that the dinosaurs come from is archosaurs,
Okay.
which means ruling reptiles.
I was going to say, I think the Triassic is my favorite era of dinosaur.
Yeah?
Jurassic Park gets like all the, everybody thinks of Jurassic
Uh-huh.
dinosaurs.
Right.
But I think Triassic actually has most of my favorites.
Really? What's your favorite?
I can't, you tell me what was alive during the Triassic. But I remember thinking like, no, just as we've learned about dinosaurs, I was like, oh, I think most of the ones I like actually weren't necessarily Jurassic. They were before that.
Right. And even though like the movie is titled Jurassic Park, they include dinosaurs from different time periods.
Well, because I want to say, it was like Stegosaurus. We won't go into specifics.
We won't go into the specifics, but there are things like the dinosaurs span.
Wait, I'm looking it up right now.
Uh-huh.
You can keep talking.
Okay, I'll keep talking. Okay, so the archosaurs, which means ruling reptiles, that's the family that the dinosaurs come from, but they also have, so they have dinosaurs, they have pterosaurs, so the flying reptiles like pterodactyl and stuff. And then my favorite word of the day, crocodilomorphs, which... You're busy looking this up,
Listen,
so you didn't laugh at the word. Crocodilomorphs are so cool.
Stegosaurus is late Jurassic.
Okay.
So wrong on my part.
Okay.
Oh, nope, I haven't heard of any of these. Never mind. Triassic is not my favorite.
Okay. Well, Ash did kudos to Ash for fact checking herself.
Listen,
I will say
I
that.
can't hold all this information in my brain all the time. Some
Yes.
things I have to allow to let go.
Yeah, that's true. And dinosaurs, since you don't even believe in them, is the obvious thing to let go.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Okay. But one of the most found fossils in Petrified Forest National Park isn't actually a dinosaur. It's not even part of the family of Archosaurus. It's part of their arch enemy, the phytosaurs.
Okay.
And so it's another crocodile type kind of reptile that fought against the archosaurs for dominance, but in the end fell like all the others to our conquering heroes, the archosaurs, the true and dominant family of ruling reptiles. But what you have, because this is the dawn of dinosaurs, like creatures are still kind of evolving out of the ocean, you have a legion of lines of different competing bloodlines trying out different things. And a lot of them are just terrifying alligator crocodile type creatures.
Mm-hmm.
And the phytosaurs differ from the crocodilomorphs because they...
You really like that word.
I love that
His
word.
His face lights up every time. It sounds like something from Power Rangers.
Like, do, 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 do. They have different bone structures and they've tried out different things, but the crocodilomorphs ended up being more dominant than the phytosaurs. But what's really interesting...
Okay, before you go into that, I have to say, never mind, Jurassic is my favorite. I looked up all three. It looks like late Jurassic and like early Cretaceous, probably.
Okay, yeah.
Because that has like the Stegosaurus and the T-Rex and the Velociraptor and the Triceratops. So I was wrong, but I think I was thinking Cretaceous. So
yeah.
Anyway,
that makes sense.
Back to what's really interesting, and I will stop looking up dinosaurs on my phone.
Okay, that sounds good. Flashback, though, to this Arizona bayou 200 million years ago. I actually think this would probably be the most terrifying ancient landscape to transport into. Because if you think about what crocodiles, alligators, and what these phytosaurs and crocodilomorphs are trying to do, they're all ambush predators.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, you could be just walking around or paddling around, and you might, like, nothing is eye level.
That's like my greatest fear at Everglades, so thanks. I'm terrified of alligators.
And since we're going to Congaree this year,
yeah.
that's all of these creatures that are just
they lurk barely under the surface, and all you can see is their little marbly eyeball poking up and staring at you.
Exactly.
Waiting for you to accidentally put your finger in the water so it can chomp it off.
Exactly. And good advice from Lord of the Rings, never disturb the water.
Yeah.
Or one of my favorite thriller movies of all time, What Lies Beneath.
Yeah.
That title is perfect.
No thanks.
For the Triassic period.
Yeah.
What lies beneath is all of these ambush predators that are just waiting for you to get close enough for them to just lunge at you.
Yeah, that's a big no from me.
And that is super cool. When you go to Petrified Forest National Park, if you go to either visitor center, the north, you can find the paleontology lab.
Yeah.
And if you go down to the south visitor center, they have amazing displays of all the different kinds of archosaurs and phytosaurs and fossils, and they show you what the landscape would have looked like.
Yeah.
And so all of that, you can explore the Triassic Park to its fullest when you visit these places in Petrified Forest National Park.
That's really cool.
But now I think we've finally set the stage properly to address the namesake of this national park. But before we can get to that...
Come on.
We have to hit one of my favorite time warps of all time. I'm taking us to the Chronicles of Narnia. Okay? The fourth book, or the second movie, The Story of Prince Caspian. In this part of the series, we return to our good friends, the Pevensies, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy. After the events of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, they returned back home through the wardrobe and have spent about a year back in England. They've been continually trying to find ways to get back to Narnia, but nothing seems to work. Finally, their moment comes as someone back in Narnia magically summons them through a magic portal, and boom! Their wish has come true. They are back. They're standing on a beautiful beach in the magical realm of Narnia. They're so excited, they run and play, they splash in the ocean, but they have no idea where they are. Edmund looks around him, and up high above them in the cliffs above the sea, he sees some strange ruins. But he doesn't remember there ever being any ruins in Narnia. So they hike up to take a look. They wander around, and Susan finds something that used to belong to Edmund. Then Lucy realizes where they are. She walks them all to a little platform, stands them in specific places, points them in the right direction, and describes what they should be seeing. Then Peter gets it. They are standing in the ruins of their old castle, Cair Paravel. And as we readers, or as watchers of the movie, we had no idea that we were in a different Narnia. They spent only a year back in England, and so when they were transported back, we thought it was apples to apples time. But they were actually transported 1,300 years into the future. And so in the books and in the movies, you actually have a time warp or a flash forward without even really experiencing one. You didn't even know it was happening. But all we have to figure it out and to put it all together are the ruins left behind of their castle of Cair Paravel. Most of this episode has been a flashback to 200 million years ago. And we're going to go back in a minute. But if we could just spend a few minutes in the present. Today, when you visit Petrified Forest National Park, you're not going to see ancient rivers and a swampy Arizona bayou, and you're not going to see ancient ruling reptiles. All you're going to see are the ruins of that ancient landscape, just like Peter and Edmund, Susan and Lucy. You're going to see what remains. And kind of like what Lady Galadriel said earlier, you'll see the remains of the things that were. And those are the things that are. And this park is named after the most amazing things that are, the trees. And not just a few trees. This isn't Petrified Tree National Park. And not just a little bit of petrified wood. It's not Petrified Wood National Park. We're talking about forests. This is Petrified Forest National Park. And this is fun fact number 3. Fun fact number 3 is that Petrified Forest National Park protects one of the largest concentrations of petrified wood in the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's so
Did they
cool.
say that officially on the NPS site too?
They had a little bit of a disclaimer.
They were a little wishy-washy.
They said that some other large concentrations.
It's one of the largest.
Yes.
But so, like, honestly, it really is crazy how much petrified wood you can see here.
Yeah, it's nuts. And like I said, and it's not just one forest either.
Yeah.
You have the jasper forest, you've got the blue forest, the crystal forest, the rainbow forest. You're seeing it all over the place. So there's multiple forests. And like we said in the Exploring Petrified Forest episode, each forest kind of has its own look.
It does.
And its own colors.
The wood looks different between the forests. And I think you're going to talk about this, but these were not little trees.
No.
These were huge trees. These were like, I don't know, dare I say, redwood-sized trees almost.
These were at least 200-foot-sized trees.
I mean, so not quite redwood, but like redwood, I think the tallest one is a little over 300 or so, you know. So, so it's like you're looking at the remains of massive, massive trees.
Yeah. If you want to kind of get a picture of what a relative of these trees would look like today, they call it the monkey puzzle tree.
Okay.
And so it's kind of pine tree-ish, but it doesn't look like a regular pine tree. I don't know. It has a really crazy shape.
But 200 feet is a big tree.
It's a huge tree. What's amazing is as you transport yourself back into this ancient landscape, they're everywhere.
Right.
They're all over the place. But what's interesting is when you see these trees petrified in this national park, they're not standing. They're all laying down.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not just because time happened.
That's because of how they actually got petrified.
Exactly. So let's get into this. Boom, we're flashing back. We're in the Arizona Bayou 200 million years ago. The trees that you're imagining standing around you are not the trees that you're seeing when you flash to the present. What we're actually seeing, the trees in the jasper forest or in the crystal forest or any of these forests in Petrified Forest, they're actually the remnants of ancient log jams.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ash, how does a log jam form? What is a log jam?
A log jam is when a whole bunch of trees fall into a river and make like a dam. Basically, they like dam up the river because the trees are just so much in the way and the river's not able to move things through anymore.
Right.
Happens all the time.
Happens all the time. You have trees that are just kind of along the river banks. You can
if the water levels come up, if there's a big storm that comes through, anything that can like knock those trees down into the water.
Exactly.
And then it all kind of just builds up on top of itself and
an ancient
stops the water.
reptile beaver that could have, who knows? Lots of reasons these trees could fall in the water. But like we talked about before, this landscape is super flat. And so these rivers, they're meandering through the landscape. They're not going super fast. And so it's kind of easy for a lot of these trees to get stuck or to stop for a million different reasons. And then other trees kind of knock into them. And then you just have a knot of all of these trees and that creates a log jam. Well, that's not the end of the story. A lot of the mountains that we mentioned earlier that are to the south, that are feeding into the river system, were volcanic mountains. And many of them erupted and exploded and just spewed ash all over the landscape. And a lot of that ash got into the rivers. And as the rivers, maybe some of them flooded, but as that ash got into the water and the water carried it down into this great valley, it deposited it along with a lot of mud and other minerals and covered up a lot of these log jams after some of these volcanic eruptions. Mm-hmm. And so you just have these buried log jams all across the landscape right here at Petrified Forest. And then something magical happened. As these trees remained buried, minerals, including silica from the volcanic ash, absorbed or soaked into the wood over hundreds and thousands and millions of years and eventually crystallized within the cellular structure of this tree and replaced the organic material as it broke down. And so basically what you have is a crystallized version of that exact tree.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you
Rings and all.
Yes, exactly. And so some of the trees, a lot of times, if there's a gap, like, you know how some trees kind of have knots and stuff in them? Sometimes there's a knot, sometimes there's like a hollow in a tree. A lot of these trees, these minerals filled in all these sections. And so sometimes you can have really unique and amazing structures and designs and things in different trees. And so none of these trees is identical to another tree.
Mm-hmm.
And they're super cool. And these petrified trees here in Petrified National Park are just so magical, which is why tens of millions of people, maybe more, have made their way to this lonely and harsh landscape in the middle of Arizona to see things that they can't see almost anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Just these massive crystallized trees that can be, in some sections, I think I found a 150-foot tree.
Yeah, we talked about that in long logs down in the southern part of the park.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to think about, why doesn't this happen other places? Because usually, in this case, the tree would just break down.
Mm-hmm.
Trees don't last that long.
Right, it's true.
So that's what's crazy about it, is it was the perfect recipe to have the log jams, and that's why you'll find such a large concentration of these petrified trees all in one spot.
Right.
Because it was a log jam.
Yeah, exactly. And it didn't happen with every single tree that died.
And then to have all that silica coming in and taking the place of the organic material. And silica, I mean, that's, maybe you're going to talk about that, but it's an incredibly hard substance. It's a very hard mineral.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, these things are basically indestructible once they've turned into a fossil.
Yeah, well, I think we may have mentioned it on the other episode. The hardness scale of things, diamonds are a 10 on a 1 to 10. These petrified trees are a 7 or an 8.
Yeah.
So incredibly hard, incredibly durable.
So that's what's crazy, though. And the way that all the stuff just fell on top of these log jams and settled into it, and probably had something to do with the water moving slowly, too, because think if it was a fast river,
yep,
you can still have log jams in a fast river, but it's going to wash stuff away much faster, too. So the fact that it was a slow, meandering river system through here meant that, you know, these trees virtually had time to soak in all of this other stuff that turned them into stone.
Exactly. Which is why you'll find amazing crystals that are like quartz and amethyst, and different minerals create different color crystals. And so you can find purples and whites and blues and browns and oranges and reds. You'll find all these different kinds of colors. And the reason that you can have different forests with different colors is because the way that the rivers deposited things differently in different spots.
Yeah. So cool. The colors are my favorite part.
I know. The petrified trees here are absolutely astounding. But as we move on, there are a couple other mysteries that we're going to touch on.
You promised me answers in Fun Fact 4.
Yes.
So.
Okay, so let's get there. There is one mystery that's half mystery, half conspiracy theory.
Oh, good.
That I think you might like.
Yeah. Sounds right up my alley.
The interesting fact / mystery is that some of the layers of geology are more radioactive than others.
Okay.
And therefore, the fossils and things that come out of them are radioactive too.
Okay.
Now, the part of this that is true and proven is that fossils from certain geological formations emit tons of radon.
Okay.
Like, not like radon from your basement type of radon, like really
radioactive,
really dangerous stuff.
Hazardous.
Yes. And so like 100 times more dangerous than what the EPA considers like minimal dangerous levels. And so that is true. What I haven't been able to verify is whether or not uranium can be absorbed into these petrified trees, which would make them a different kind of radioactive. Because, as we talked about like in the Canyonlands Fun Facts episode, the specific formations had more uranium than others. And so was uranium a mineral that could be absorbed into the crystallized structure of these petrified trees? The government so far has plausible deniability.
Why do we care about that?
Because it's cool.
Okay. just wondering.
I have been able to find plenty of like websites and Reddit threads that say that, yes, petrified trees are uraniumly radioactive, but the government has so far been unwilling to verify. Okay, this leads me to fun fact number 4, which is true and a super cool mystery fact. And this will lead me into that pin that we put in earlier. Fun fact number 4 is that Petrified Forest National Park is home to a massive geological unconformity and is missing 192 million years worth of geologic history.
Nice. That's like when we talked about Acadia.
Yeah.
It's like there's just a huge chunk of time gone.
Uh-huh.
And that's the time that John starts telling stories.
Exactly. All right, well, let me put this in a different way. Petrified Forest National Park has been, is today, and will forever be a Triassic park.
Okay.
Okay, the pin that you asked me earlier.
Where do we find these Triassic rocks?
Exactly. There are basically 2 geologic formations in Petrified Forest. The Chinle Formation, which is from the Triassic era, 200 plus million years ago.
That one has lots of fossils in it.
Lots and lots of fossils. And then you have the Bitahochi Formation, which was laid down about 3 to 8 million years ago.
Okay, I was going to say I've never heard of that one. That one's too recent.
Yeah, but there is nothing in between. And you don't even have that much of the Bitahochi Formation. There is a little bit of it in the north, but even still, geologically, what we're saying is that Petrified Forest National Park showcases the Triassic period, and in some places, a little bit of dust gathered on top.
So the Bitahochi isn't even really the top layer anywhere.
Right.
So you're looking at Triassic rocks basically
the
everywhere.
Whole place.
No way.
Yes, almost the entire place.
Even the Badlands ones.
Especially the Badlands ones.
Because I know Badlands formations typically are really fossil heavy.
Mm-hmm.
But I just thought, there's no way it goes back 200 plus million years.
No, it's amazing. It's like everything else has been blown, scraped, washed, or broomed away so that you can observe the dawn of the dinosaurs and the age of reptiles with magical crystallized trees without any distractions or any obstructions.
There's no other layers.
There's nothing.
That's crazy.
Which is why geologists and paleontologists love it. It's an absolute playground for them. And now for us too, now that we know what we're looking at. To use the Lady Galadriel mirror reference one last time, if a park ranger ever asks you to look into a mirror at Petrified Forest National Park and you ask, what will I see? Their answer must be Triassic Park. The world as it was 200 to 250 million years ago and nothing else. And so as you go throughout this park, you have chances to see dinosaur fossils, archosaur fossils, phytosaur fossils everywhere. And like they've combed through the places and they're continually finding more and more fossils and identifying a few hotbeds here and there where they find extra stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you really can find stuff anywhere in this park.
Color me surprised.
I know.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah. Never have I seen a national park with such a singular focus.
Yeah.
It's like Will Ferrell's character from Eurovision. All he wants to do is win Eurovision so that he can prove to everybody in Iceland and his father that he hasn't wasted his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so Petrified Forest only cares about this 150 million year chunk of time. And that is the story it wants to tell. And I love it and I wouldn't change it.
Well, especially if it's hard to find elsewhere.
Right.
I mean, that really is unique. So they should play it up more.
They should. I think so.
Shouldn't be our job. We don't hardly know. I didn't even know what dinosaurs existed.
Oh my gosh. I know. But this place, it's just kind of crazy to me. You can drive through it, but really because, we're there for the petrified trees. We don't realize how much this is just dedicated to an entire epoch of time.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can find everything Triassic branded in this park.
Yeah.
From beginning to end, you can find all the different lines of evolution that were competing to be the top dog in the Triassic period on planet Earth. And you can see how the dinosaurs and the archosaurs and the pterosaurs, how they ended up winning the arms race to evolve the best tools. And if you can't see what I'm doing right now, it's because this is a podcast, but
He's doing like little velociraptor arms.
Exactly. I couldn't help it. It just happened. Which I'm glad you said velociraptor arms instead of T-Rex arms, because I feel like those did not evolve properly.
No, it was like full claw.
Yes.
Like he was full claw.
Yes, that was great. Oh, what a journey. Oh my gosh. Okay.
We still have one more.
A road trip back in time.
Okay.
Okay, but yeah, that brings us to fun fact number
road
5.
Trip.
Yes.
You
caught it.
I got it.
You caught my little clue into fun fact number 5. Okay. You know, there may be a time when I revisit Petrified Forests human history and we talk about the native peoples or the early settlers and explorers or the people
because you can see native stuff too.
Yeah,
there's petroglyphs in this park. Anyway.
Yeah.
Continue.
But the only thing that I was interested in for today's episode is what brought people here to see Triassic Park. What enabled them to come.
Because why else?
Route 66.
Route 66. Yep.
Fun fact number 5 is that Petrified Forest National Park is the only national park site that contains a segment of the historical Route 66 alignment.
Nice.
The only one, and I love how they even said site. There's not even a monument or anything else that has any part of the historic Route 66. It's just this park.
And it goes right through it, baby.
Ah, it's so cool. Hold on, I gotta have a moment.
He's really worked up about this.
Okay, but I think we all recognize that culturally, Route 66 was pretty important to what we would probably term Americana.
Yeah.
Right? So, you know, you're probably thinking like mid-1900s, 1950s kind of Americana vibe. But what I didn't actually realize is how important Route 66 was to more of our history and kind of the American psyche in a lot of ways. Because it wasn't just like a fun vacation road trip road. It
connects a whole bunch of things.
Oh, yeah. So Route 66, if you don't know, it stretches from Chicago all the way to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
So Illinois through California. And it's known as like the Mother Road or the Main Street of America. And it was one of our country's major thoroughfares for nearly half a century.
I was going to say, what other roads were going east to west like that? There probably weren't many.
Well, especially because this was kind of the beginning of the interstate highway system.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of, like, if it wasn't for Route 66, it would have taken forever for us to come up with even the idea of a road trip.
Yeah.
And so it stretches 2,400 miles across 2/3 of North America. And the highway winds from the shores of Lake Michigan, like I said, all the way to California, but it goes through Missouri, it goes through Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, through the Mojave Desert, and all the way to the Pacific Ocean.
Were you going to sing the song? It sounded like you were gearing up for it.
I was avoiding doing that because I just don't think I could do it justice. But there actually was a US 66 Highway Association that advertised it as the shortest, best, and most scenic route from Chicago through St. Louis to Los Angeles. But what we don't often recognize is how it wasn't always a symbol of recreation and fun as we kind of view it as today when we see it in that 1950s Americana version of Route 66.
Mm-hmm.
What it actually was for its first, 20, 30 years, it was seen as an opportunity for a better life because it became like a newer form of a wagon train heading west. And so if you read The Grapes of Wrath, it shows up in that book. But if you think about the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, there was a vast migration of destitute people that were fleeing their homes, heading west, just like the wagon trains earlier in American history, of people looking for opportunities and looking for a better life out west. And so what became the Route 66 route, lots of mom and pop shops and businesses popped up along the way. Lots of little towns here and there popped up to help travelers along their way towards a new and exciting life. And due to a lot of this popularity, Route 66 actually became the first highway to be completely paved in 1938.
Really? Nice.
Which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
And so the U.S., we've always been looking for opportunity. We're always it's part of our blood in a lot of ways. We're looking for America to provide us opportunities for a better life and go out west. This was one of the major things that we've always said, head west. World War II kind of stopped a lot of things. But then after World War II, what's amazing is as all of these soldiers came home, automobile ownership doubled in the 10 years following the war. And so that's why all of a sudden it went from opportunity to a recreation Americana road trip vibe.
Right.
Because suddenly there wasn't, before the war, there was like 28 million cars. After the war, there was 52 million plus. And so then all of these people coming back home had good jobs, basically. They, Europe was blown up. And so we were the manufacturing capital of the world and people had some disposable income. And then they thought, you know what? Let's go out to Disneyland.
On the paved road.
That's right. On the paved road. And so it was that's when it like completely changed. But then in like the 1960s, we created a new interstate highway system. And Route 66 slowly fell out of use because it was no longer the most efficient way. There was other freeways and highways that took people straight to where they wanted to go.
As we learn about in Cars extensively.
Exactly. That's the whole story of Radiator Springs.
Yep.
But the reason why this fun fact is kind of neat, that it's the only national park site that contains even a segment of the historic Route 66, is because in 1990, after years and years of Route 66 falling out of use and disrepair and chunks of it, getting tore up or whatever, the United States Congress passed a law. It was recognizing that Route 66 had become a symbol of the American people's heritage of travel and their legacy of seeking a better life. And then 18 years later, still efforts really hadn't gone to preserving much of Route 66. And so in 2008, Route 66 was actually put on the World Monuments Fund, which listed Route 66 on a watch list of the 100 most endangered sites. And so there's no effort really to go into preserving any of Route 66 because it's not an effective use of travel. There's not hardly any roads that do it anymore. But the National Trust for Historic Places has also listed Route 66 on their endangered National Historic Sites list. So it's actually a big deal that Route 66, there's a portion of it that is going through, or a segment of it that goes right through Petrified Forest National Park, because it will forever be a legacy of this spot and this road. And so when you visit and you drive through Petrified Forest National Park and you stop at that little spot where it memorializes Route 66, realize
there's a car there.
this is one of the only places in the country where it actually celebrates that specific road and memorializes it like that.
Yeah.
So it's super cool.
It is super cool.
And it brought millions of people, that road brought millions of people to this place where they can now experience Triassic Park. They can see the wood, they can see the fossils, they can experience and learn about what it was like in this part of the world 200 plus million years ago and see what is here now, which is those crystallized trees, which are just blow you away. Forests of them all over the place. Anyways, hopefully this helps as you drive through Petrified Forest National Park. as you visit it to appreciate where you're standing, because you're standing on ground that is so ancient and where there should be reptiles waiting to pounce on you, just like Ash's nightmares.
Yeah, that's not something that I want to think about, but we made it to the end of the episode. So today we want to know, for your task, what are you most excited about?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the trees kind of, bring in the most attention.
As they should.
Obviously, yeah. But now that you know that this is Triassic Park, maybe we persuaded you to look at this park a little bit differently.
Right.
Before you visit. So head over to our Facebook or Instagram page at Dirt in My Shoes and chime in. What are you excited about? Are you excited about Triassic Park, like the fossils and the dinosaurs and stuff like that? Or are you still more excited about seeing the trees?
Right.
There's no wrong answer. You can be excited about both. But go weigh in. Let us know what you think about this episode.
And if you wouldn't mind, please also give us a 5-star review. It helps the podcast, and it helps people know this is a great National Parks podcast to listen to.
And we hope that you're able to go and get some dirt in your shoes.